Police Chief Dennis Kohlmeyer, your first formal presentation as the Chief of Police at Webster Police, 4 days from your first official day, yeah?
Yes.
Is this called indoctrination by fire?
I believe it.
The podium is yours, Dennis.
I appreciate that.
We're having a little technical difficulty with our PowerPoint, but the main point of me being here tonight is to talk about our police reform and collaboration plan that we're putting together. This is our initial kind of public briefing on how far we've come with it and which direction we're going and the process that's going to be involved. So the first, I think, kind of foundation to lay here is that I think there's been some confusion about why we're doing this and where this comes from. So this is a directive from New York State that every municipality that has their own police department needs to look at the services we're providing, how we're providing them, and how we're addressing our stakeholder needs. So as a police department, we've been doing this since before I started, obviously, around June timeframe. Chief Rieger initiated this process. As you can imagine, with this kind of large project, there's a lot of information gathering that has to happen. So that was really one of the initial foundations that we did as an agency. So Chief Rieger carried the ball most of the way. Upon his retirement, interim Chief Fosdick continued, and now I'm picking up the process to move it forward. As you can imagine, across three different leaders, there's a little bit of direction change that happens and a little bit of assessment that happens to our process, and we kind of refine it. So what we've done so far is we've had a couple initial attempts to get our stakeholder input into our process. We started that by Chief Rieger attending a lot of different meetings throughout the county, observing and shadowing other agencies as they went through the process. He participated in numerous meetings and subcommittees with some faith-based organizations within our community, and that kind of got the initial conversations going of how what perspective we should be taking with our organization. So what we've done is started to incorporate that feedback. We did an initial online survey through the town website to get some basic feedback from those that are willing to provide it through an online forum. And based on those two things, we got the ball rolling on our internal review of our process and our policies. For those who don't know, our police department is accredited in New York State. It has been for quite a long time. So that really helped us and set us up for success when it came to addressing our policies and procedures. If you look through the 203 workbook that comes along with the mandate for this process, they identified 10 key strategies of concern that they really wanted municipalities to look at. And we were fortunate enough to have policies for pretty much all of those and training that addressed the ones that we didn't have a specific policy for. So when we start breaking down the workbook and the process that happens, obviously we want to hit the most critical elements first. So we address the strategies of concern. Next component that comes after the strategies of concern are strategies that help reduce racial disparities and help build trust. And we're already engaged in a lot of those different forums. So as we look through our policies and how we address our stakeholders, we look at community policing and getting our agency integrated with our community and making sure that's comprehensive and hits all of the stakeholder needs. So based on our initial process so far, we identified focus areas that we needed to divert our attention to. And you see on the screen there, intelligence-led policing is that first focus area. That allows us to use data to drive decisions, drive resource allocation, and really make sure we're targeting the right crimes and the right policies and procedures on an operational capacity. Diversification of the workforce. Obviously, we are subject to civil service policies and procedures when it comes to hiring. So we work through civil service in one or two capacities. One is either by hiring new recruits off civil service lists, and the other is through transfer officers. So really what our goal is, and I think we've done a fairly good job at trying to get this message out there, but it's obviously something that we can always improve upon, is work to diversify our staff and make sure that we are doing what we can to attract diverse populations to want to be police officers in the town of Webster and work for our agency. Community policing has always been a tenet of the Webster Police Department, and that shouldn't continue. So shouldn't stop. So we're going to continue to push that as a focus area. Atmosphere of openness and transparency. Those are ways that we can get feedback from citizens. Those are ways we can show them that we're an open book. We have really nothing to hide when it comes to how we conduct business and how we handle citizen complaints. The police as a guardian is a emphasis on being a protector, not necessarily always that warrior mindset that you sometimes hear through communication and through media about police officers always being prepared for the fight. We know that it's not always about the fight; it's about the guarding our citizens and being there as a protecting force. Training priorities are always assessed in our agency, and one of the things that we've already committed to as an agency is the CIT training for all our officers. We've already had 8 officers go through that week-long program, and we've committed, like the other police agencies in Monroe County, to get our entire sworn staff through that training to make sure that we are helping people in crisis. The Peelian Principles is kind of a broad concept in law enforcement. It's based on Sir Robert Peel's Guide to Policing. Essentially, it is your citizens in uniform. It's your law enforcement looking at their duties and responsibilities as citizens and as protectors. So those are some messaging things internally, and some of those are efforts that we're looking to focus our attention on as we move forward. And as we've looked through this process, we acknowledge that we haven't had good contact yet with all our stakeholders. So our plan to move forward with this is starting tonight, we're going to open the website application process for a stakeholder committee. The state has given us guidance on some of the required participants that they want to see on these committees, and others are recommended. And we're going to try to get as many people as we can to participate. So we're going to ask our residents to apply for this committee and try to be part of the process to help us look at our policies and procedures going forward. So I'm not going to go through the entire list of the stakeholders that we're trying to connect with, but that application process starts tonight, and it's going to go for a week. After that week is up, we will look at who's applied and try to get as many people involved in our committee. We're going to try to have bi-weekly meetings over a 2-month period to try to get as much input as we can and perspective on our policies and the plan that we're going to submit. At the same time, we have what I call a phase 1 draft of the work that's been done up to this point, and where we think that we can start getting feedback from our residents as well. So we're going to submit that through the website also. Tomorrow we're going to open that up for residents to review and start soliciting feedback directly on the work that we have up to this point. And our target timeline would be the applications opening tonight, our phase 1 draft being released. We're going to go for a week. We're going to close the comments on the public feedback for that initial phase 1 draft and start the selection of the stakeholder process. March 18th, we are still going to request the board pass a resolution to submit the phase 1 plan to the state to meet the April 1st compliance deadline to the Office of Budget for New York State. And we are going to have our committee members selected by that March 18th board meeting. And then we are shooting to have our initial meetings start April 1st, and then go for about an eight-week time period. Once we're done with our stakeholder input on our policies and procedures and the plan that we create as a group, then we're going to seek to have a public forum to review those recommendations for the policies. And then after we have vetted that process and updated our plan, we look to the board again for phase 2 to be approved and then submitted as part of the ongoing communication with our community. And that's that.
You do know, Dennis, when you said at the end, that's it. That's a lot.
That is a lot. So it is a pretty aggressive agenda that we're trying to push in, but we want to connect with as many people as possible and get as much input into our organization process as possible.
And also you have a deadline.
We do. We have the deadline for the initial submission. I think in a perfect world, we would have wanted this stakeholder process to start a little bit earlier, but we're doing it now.
And I can say that, Dennis, if to anybody watching at home or who sees this later, if anybody interprets this as we're all of a sudden fast-tracking this with a month to go before April 1st, I can assure you that that was not the case. You know, Chief Rieger was very much in tune with this, and we made a conscious decision that we couldn't really have Chief Rieger finish it, and then all of a sudden a new chief, yourself, who we didn't know who that was going to be back in December and January, that wouldn't be fair to all of a sudden hand you a baton of something you didn't have your, bite at the apple of. So that was our gift to you as you came in the door. But there was a framework around it.
Yeah,
already.
absolutely.
So I mean, it definitely was a thought-out, conscious decision to not finish it back in January, February, and get ahead of it, because then you would have just inherited something, and I know that that's not a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and just to reinforce that point, this is an organizational process. This is a lot of different layers of our organization contributing to this. There was a lot of hard work put into the foundation that was laid and the initial report that's been generated for public review.
Because I even think like the 550 or 600 respondents to the survey, I think, Karen, that was December? Was it that far back? Was it October, November? So, I mean, this has been ongoing. It's not, so, anyway, I won't belabor the point, but.
Yeah, and to be honest, it will be ongoing. Even after the process we've identified is over, we're always going to continually seek improvement and look for our stakeholders to be involved in our process.
Anybody else?
I know that the deadline for the first submission, I believe, was April 1st. Is there a deadline for that second?
No, I don't believe that there is any follow-up deadlines beyond the April 1st submission.
Okay.
Bill?
No, we're good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dennis?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.